The luxury car market in India is really booming. A lot of the brands are doing well, including Audi, which is increasing its sales every year. And talking to me about the performance in India and globally, we have with us Andre Konsbruck, who's the Vice President of Sales of Audi AG. Mr. Konsbruck, thanks for talking to us. Just before we get into India, I just wanted you to give an overall outlook on the luxury car market. It seems to be one of those segments coming out of COVID, which seems to be doing really well, and there's still a shortage issue, a supply issue with it.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have seen in the COVID space, in the COVID area, in the pandemic, during the pandemic, that a lot of money was saved because people were not able to spend money. So they were not traveling, they were not really buying luxury goods, they were not leaving their homes. And we see now that money really coming back into the marketplace, and the premium market is really benefiting out of it. Not only the premium markets, we see also even in India, you see that we are both the premium market and the total market are evolving, but the premium market is growing faster. So, and I think also people have a different perception now after they experience that pandemic to say, let's do something for myself. Yeah, and we see it in luxury goods in general. Try to get a Rolex around the world. Yeah, but even luxury cars, even luxury homes, but also luxury holidays. You see really a boom in that industry because people are just prepared to spend more for personal experiences, which they really value, and they just spend money on it. Yeah?
Right. And before we come to India, just looking at the markets you're handling, I think over 70 markets, which markets do you see really booming right now? And, again, I'm sure a lot of them must be of a small base. And where really is the growth coming from?
Well, in general, we see everywhere growth. To be honest, in terms of booming, India would be really, really there because with a 30% growth in the premium market, you can't really find it in a lot of spaces.
But it's a small base, isn't it?
It's a small base, currently around these 4,000-5,000 cars. And also the premium market is still very, very small, with 1% of the total market in India. But it's in general, we have other markets which are much closer to 10% and above. So of course, there you have more potential to grow from the past. But it's not that we have really, I think a lot of markets of our markets, we have this huge growth potential. Yeah. So it's difficult really to estimate what is really growth. In India, we know and we see that it's also coming out of economic growth with your GDP growth, which is amongst the strongest globally. That's what gives us also the confidence that we will progress further, and we will talk about it. But it's in other markets, sometimes it's really how much is still some things that we have to catch up from the pandemic, and how much is really true growth in our markets.
Right. And what we've seen with Audi in India, and in terms of, I think you've chosen a path of, I think maybe profitability over market share, because looking at the numbers in the past, not as much. Also, I think there's no diesel right now, which accounts even for a small percentage of the segment. You're doing about 5,000 cars right now. So clearly, there is growth. I mean, looking forward, what are your projections? Are you happy with this number? Or is it, again, a strategy of growing profitably and organically?
Yeah. So, of course, back 10 years, we were number one in the marketplace. And of course, you could always assume that's our ambition to come back to that position. Yeah. And of course, I would never say no if there would be a possibility to get there. Truly, I think with our portfolio and our strategy, we believe we can get back to that position. But on the other hand, and as you said already, our profitable, sustainable growth was always for us much more important. You remember by that time, everybody was very optimistic about India. When we started also our operations here, we pushed a lot of people into huge investments and whatever, and then the growth didn't come as expected. And that was not related to us or to performance issues. It was really the market was not yet there. So it was not really stable. It's different today, but by that time, so we had to disinvest in the marketplace, and that's also always costly. And as I said, we are not alone in the boat. We have stakeholders, we have partners here, investors, and for us, it's very important that we add value also to all these stakeholders and also to our partners. So a profitable business case is not only valid for us, but also to our dealers. So sustainable, profitable growth is really at the top of our agenda. And the next thing is, you can grow fast, but it doesn't need to go at the expense of or it mustn't go at the expense of the customer. So for us, customer centricity is really relevant to create these meaningful experiences, but to keep them really fascinated about the brand, really happy about the brand. So the faster you grow, sometimes it's at the expense of the customer. So yes, we want to grow. Yes, we do really see a huge potential, linked also to the growth, the expected growth of the premium market. We see really a chance that the market will evolve towards 100,000 units, so triple.
And what time frame do you think that could happen?
Around 2030.
Right. Do you think it'd be 100,000 market?
Yeah, I think within this decade, I think, all the projections around the economic wealth, about GDP growth, about total market evolution towards 5.5 or 5 million cars, I really believe that 2% of that total market, so meaning doubling the percentage, which is still a very low number. So for me, the projection of 100,000 units is absolutely realistic in India. So which makes it really relevant on our agenda, of course, because tripling and tripling not from what we are coming from today, because today we couldn't exploit fully the potential. You mentioned before the semiconductor topic. You mentioned also the lack of some products that we faced also in the past. And when we disinvested, we also made the decision on purpose. Right. By a time where the market was still 80% diesel in premium, we took away the diesel. Right. Today it's 40%. So I think at least we anticipated the right trend that right. Diesel share would go down, but it's still 40% of the market where we are not playing and we are not right. in there. So assuming that we would have the real performance of the Audi brand tripling, I believe that really Audi can sell between 20 and 30,000 units in the future. So for us, it's much more than tripling right. the volume of today.
Right. So you're looking at what you're saying is you think a 30% market share is something you could look at by I won't pin you to it. It's a long way.
I think I would also, for us, as I said, sustainable, profitable growth, right. Not at the expense of our partners. So in combination, it will be something between 20 and 30%. Yeah. Right. If we can do it at 30% and everybody's happy, and the customer also remains happy, of course, why wouldn't I go for the 30%, which would be for sure very close to the number one position. But if it's 20%, it's fine also, as long as it's sustainable.
Yeah. You raise a very good point, and I think it goes to show what a fantastic job the team has done over here, that operating in just 60% of the market without the diesel, they've sold these numbers. So, I think in that sense, it's a pretty good number. But just going forward, what are the, let's say, ways you plan to grow your market share and your volumes? Obviously, product will be one of them.
Yes.
There are still, to be honest, there are still some gaps in the portfolio which probably need to be filled, maybe at the lower end or certain within the range. Is this going to be a focus area? And I just want to get your sense on that.
So I think you mentioned the most important one is, of course, the product offer. I think that the Audi strategy globally is that we will not launch a single ICE car after 2026 anymore. So right. Audi will stop after 2026, not stop producing ICE cars. So we will still launch the last generation for the next 7 years, so until 2033. But 2033 we will produce the last ICE car, and after 2026 we will only launch EV cars. So we are completely becoming an EV brand. So that's a clear strategy, and we are sticking to that strategy. So, and meaning currently, of course, that means in the meantime, in the transition phase, you're going to have a much larger portfolio, because we are more or less mirroring the thing. So whatever we have in the A, B, C, D segment today, ICE, we will mirror one-to-one with EV. So meaning the customer can enjoy a huge portfolio in the transition phase, and then coming back to a normal portfolio later on. So for sure, in the past we made some some choices that we would not launch this or that or this volume or model. For the next generation, it's clear India is at least on our portfolio, on our project table, they would get all the models.
Right.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, at the end of the day, you need to be competitive. And we know that it's a market which very high tax, tax and duties. So that means the only way here to be competitive is to localize. Yeah?
So I want to come to that localization. Can we see more of that? And can we see that even with the EVs? Because let's be honest, some of your competitors are localizing the EV. And if that's going to be the future, I think you need to start maybe now localizing the EVs because to build the kind of growth base for you.
Yeah. So currently we are focusing on, of course, of localizing the next generation of IC cars because, as I said, they are still with us until 2030 and something. And the tipping point where we expect that we sell more, or that the premium market will sell more EVs than IC cars, is around 2028.
In India.
In India.
Right.
So meaning, which is very close to Europe. Europe is more or less expected for 27. So it's really very advanced country in this respect, which you wouldn't expect in general when you look at the size of the city and whatever, but the cities. But it's really something which we believe is realistic. 2028 in India. So meaning we have still another 5 years. So IC will still be predominant, and then even after it will still be 50, 40, 30% of the market. So that's our key focus now. But of course, once we reach a certain volume threshold, we will need to localize the EVs. And as I said before, EV transformation, we will be EV. So if we want to remain in this marketplace, and we will not be competitive as an FBU brand, for sure. Of course, we are thinking about it. We are evaluating currently, also together on a Volkswagen Group perspective, not only on a pure Audi perspective, because we have some platforms that we are still sharing. But on EV, we also have platforms that are very much just Audi and Porsche used by those two brands. So we will have to make that effort. Yeah, we didn't make the final decision yet, so right. I cannot announce anything. But of course, we have to evaluate because that's the only way to survive in the mid and long term.
So clearly, there are some products of yours on the MEB platform, which Q4 and which are shared by Volkswagen and Skoda. I guess this would be it'd have to be a kind of a joint strategy between all the brands to localize a particular platform. I mean, is that the way forward? And just to understand that this would very much hinge on Volkswagen and Skoda's electrification plans in India as well.
Exactly. So I think if I want to localize the Q4, it will always go together with Skoda and Volkswagen. And I think they are big players in this marketplace. They have the same thoughts that we have. We are very much aligned, and of course we are working together. So maybe this will be even the first one that we will be able even to localize, which would be great because it would also give us the entry position into EV, because I think still EV is quite expensive in the marketplace, and we have to come down in terms of pricing. So Q4 will be, of course, for us very, very relevant here. And then the other new models like Q6, A6 e-tron,
right.
Q8 e-tron are based on an Audi platform.
That's right. So just coming to Q4, it's likely that if you launch it here, it might be an FBU first, and then because localization I don't think will happen for the next 2-3 years at least, and you're already into the life cycle of the Q4 by then. So is it fair to assume Q4 might be a FBU first, and then maybe next gen could be
for sure. We are working currently on an FBU version because just to be on the safe side. Yeah?
Right.
And of course, I will always push also to get the car ideally homologated, so that because we have also a CO2 scheme in India. But but it could be, depending on when the platform will be released, and also for India, that it will be very close. Yeah. But of course, to be on the safe side, I would always work in parallel on both scenarios.
Right. And and just last few questions. I just want to get your thoughts on the sports car segment, really the high end, the RS customer, going from IC to electric. Obviously, the RS e-tron GT is is there, and it's really quite a fantastic car to drive. But How do you sense the super sports car and the very high end of the market developing and the impact of electrification on that?
So for us, it's key. Whatever the size of the market is, and the market is growing, it's key for our brand. You know, we want to be a prestige brand, but we want to be a Vorsprung durch Technik brand. We want to express progress, and it's highly emotional. So for the brand to emotionalize the brand, we need these cars like e-tron GT and RS e-tron GT, and we will of course need also the RS models. So the good news is that the same way that we are mirroring the product portfolio,
yeah.
So the RS ICE, the next generation will have extremely highly emotional RS models, really in terms of design, extremely differentiated from the base model, and the same will apply to the e-tron. So for the full e-tron range, I can promise you all of the e-trons will have an RS.
Wow.
So whether it be a 6 e-tron and all the other models, you will see in the future we'll see always an RS derivative of this.
Down the range as well.
So yeah, maybe at least we'll say we will work on it.
Yeah,
but
so
it's,
even a Q4 e-tron you'll have an RS version.
On Q4 not.
Right.
Yeah, but when we really talk about maybe Q6, and then Q8 and then A6 e-tron, at least in these segments we are thinking about at least also considering to have this to continue this RS philosophy, because again, why would I give up this strong naming, this strong success of RS models, where we are extremely successful as a brand globally? Just give it away by leaving the ICE models. Yeah, of course with RS, with the e-trons, the story needs to go on.
And you know, again on electrification, you've talked about all the RS models. You've got the Q range electrified, the sedans. You know, I think others have, in a way, been ahead. They've launched electrified luxury sedans. Obviously, we will see this as well. Just to understand, what's Audi's strategy for that? Because right now it's more the kind of the Q range which is getting electrified, and you know, obviously the sedans. I don't know what the strategy there.
Yeah, it's the same. As I said, we will mirror exactly our offer. So we will see down from A, B, C, D segment. All segments will be covered also both with sedans and electrified Qs.
Right.
And not electrified, but electric.
Yeah. BEV. Right. But just one thing, do you think there's a challenge when you go electric? Because electric cars, to be honest, are very one-dimensional. Here you have a V8, you have natural aspiration, you have a V6, you have 4 cylinders. Each one has their own character. Is this been one of the big challenges to really create that differentiation and emotion in EVs? Because as I said, you know, to be honest, they're very one-dimensional in the way electric cars perform, because that's how a motor really is.
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't see that as a challenge. I think because you have a lot of advantages. Yeah? First of all, interior space. Right. As you know, with the battery, it gives you completely different opportunities packaging, how to design the interior. So we are now, Mark Lichter, always our chief designer, always says we are now developing cars inside out, and not first doing the body and then designing some interior. We do exactly the opposite way, because it gives us completely different opportunities, and you will see it when the Q6 comes. The amount of space that the car offers in the interior, it's always one segment above, yeah, right, compared to the ICE versions. Yeah? So that's one thing, and that's what people really enjoy. In fact, they get more car for their money. In terms of performance, and I'm now maybe the wrong person to talk to, but I drive now since the very beginning. I had e-trons, and now I have an e-tron GT that I drive, and I drove RS6s and everything. When you look at the sheer performance of the acceleration of e-tron, yes, it's always the same, but it's very powerful. And I personally really enjoy driving those cars. And I think everybody who really is used to drive these cars, you have all the time full performance. Yeah? You don't have to heat up your engine. You can immediately push your car. So at least, you know, for me, there's a lot of advantages. And the driving also, where now the load, the weight of is really balanced on the bottom of your car. Also the driving dynamics, even with the e-tron, the first time we did some slaloms on the racetrack and whatever, we were really surprised how the car really behaved. And on the e-tron GT, where of course it's a different platform, you see it's a real sports car. So for me, it doesn't really lose any of its emotional genes. I would even say sometimes it adds even some of emotions without the sound, which I thought I would be missing, but I don't really.
Yeah, sometimes you buy an EV for it being quiet.
Maybe, but at least I can promise you don't really miss it. So for me, it's not a compromise. I think the only thing which is more in the mind of our customers is charging infrastructure.
Right.
It's range, it's charging infrastructure. How will I handle that? Is this an issue? Yes or no? How can I travel? And that's our job to take these concerns away from the customer.
And last question, on this point on EVs, you've signed the end date for the combustion engine. Yes. There's no turning back. Are there any worries? I mean, do you think by the time you get there, charging infra won't happen? It seems there is a little element of it still being a gamble, because today I don't think any market is fully ready, to kind of replace. Let's say, I mean, people can, but the kind of convenience you have with the ICE is not there. Are there any worries that you all are now going ahead? You've committed. ICE is going to die. We're going to be full EVs in a decade or so. There's so many issues right now: geopolitical issues, sourcing, supply, raw materials, charging, infra. A lot of unknowns beyond a car manufacturer's control.
Yeah. Of course, and this is always a choice that you have to make. That's why you go for a strategy. But if you are not 100% into it, it will not happen. So for us, we said, okay, we will reach a point of no return. Of course, you can always extend and then do another facelift or whatever on the ICE cars, and then maybe keep it for another 2 or 3 years in the marketplace. And we might need it for some of the markets, especially in my region, where we see the EV transformation can be much slower. I just came from South Africa, where we said, well, maybe by 2030 we will not even reach 20%. Right. So, but we also see that when the governments and the regulators start to intervene and do some subsidy programs, like also in India, we can see that the things are turning around very fast. So it means if the government is really supporting it, and that's what we are experiencing now in India, and we see also some investment from, I'm not talking just about the government, also with the private sector, investment into charging infrastructure. And of course, you need to guarantee the supply and make sure the supply is there. I have no doubt that it will really happen. Now, that would be the only concerns. So then it's cost of raw material that you mentioned. There was clear that for us, with the scaling of batteries, the costs will come down. Right. But the Russia-Ukraine crisis then proved us that then suddenly things you can have external influences, which then can delay this or even reverse this. Well, they reversed in the very beginning. Now it's stabilized again. Now the costs are coming down again. But it delayed the trend. A lot of disruption. And these kind of disruptions, the world is very volatile, and this can always happen.
But what's interesting? So what you're saying is your last ICE might have its longest life cycle, with constant little refreshes. The last ICE vehicles may, because depending on the markets.
Yeah, currently we are just calculating with a normal life cycle, which is around these 6-7 years. If we launch the last car in 26 and we stop in 2033, it's the normal lifetime.
But you could extend it on depending on the market.
I think if you would see that we had a massive issue, I don't know. I can't say, because we have a certain number of factories, and of course you cannot run every product in parallel in the factories. Right. But so if we would really see that globally or whatever, we would need some ICE cars a little bit longer. That would be the only flexibility when you have your point of no return. But it's not about developing another Q3 successor or another Q5 successor. I think that's really off the agenda. Right. That's off the agenda. And then, as I said, with a facelift and when the cars look nice, I think you can always even survive for 1 or 2 more years. But in general, I think the normal life cycle in our industry, in the premium industry, is around 7 years. That's what I think you experience today.
Well, thanks very much for that very long-term view. Good to know that even India is, you've got a very good prognosis of it, and the fact that you want to increase your market share, and wish you all the best, and thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.